Hey everybody, this is Massachusetts Governor Charlie Baker.
And First Lady Lauren Baker. Welcome everyone to the 2020 Massachusetts Association for Mental Health Gala.
Now, obviously this one's virtual this year, which is a little different, but Lauren and I have both really enjoyed attending this event year over year for so many years and supporting this great organization. And tonight we want to welcome some special guests. We want to welcome Joe Feaster, who's the co-chair of the Boston Advisory Board and my brother's keeper. And Joe, I just have to say, you have been there so many times for so many people over the course of so many years. I want to thank you again for stepping up here. I also want to welcome Brigadier General Jack Hammond, who's the Executive Director of Home Base, which is a wonderful organization that provides mental health services to the men and women who serve our country and deal with the so-called invisible wounds of war. And Jack, I got one of your ties on tonight. And I also want to provide a special welcome to my friend, my colleague, Mary Lou Sutter, Secretary of Health and Human Services. We also want to express our congratulations to tonight's award winners. First of all, Senator Cindy Friedman. Looking forward to getting that healthcare bill done by the end of the session, Senator. And of course, Bob Rivers, who is the CEO of Eastern Bank. And Bob, you know, all I can say is, you were playing the corporate responsibility game long before anybody else, and it's about time a whole bunch of people have an opportunity to follow your lead. And finally, my congressman, our congressman, Seth Moulton, for all the work that you've done on mental health issues, particularly as they relate to the vets community. Congratulations to all three.
And tonight we're here to really celebrate MAMH and the incredible work that MAMH has been doing for years and years to improve the understanding and awareness of mental health issues here in the Commonwealth and to provide resources to people in need all over Massachusetts. The work that you do for so many to help ease the pain and confusion of mental health issues is a huge asset to the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. Thank you, MAMH.
And for those of you who sometimes may not be able to put a personal touch to this. Lauren served on the board of MAMH for many years, and I just have to say, as a newly minted member of Bill Weld's cabinet and Paul Salucci's cabinet back in the early 1990s, MAMH, Joe Finnegan, Bernie Carey, those folks walked me through my paces and really brought an incredible level of knowledge, understanding, and advocacy to these issues. And MAMH has been there time and time again for so many people, and I really hope that you'll be there for them this year.
Thank you, MAMH, for all the great work you do. Have a great night tonight.
Take care.
Thank you, Governor Baker and First Lady Lauren Baker, for your kind words and for all the good work you do on behalf of the mental health community in Massachusetts. Please accept our gratitude for the leadership provided and the actions taken to protect and promote the health and well-being of all of us during the COVID-19 pandemic. I'd like to take this opportunity to welcome all our viewers and to thank you for taking the time to join us this evening. I'd also like to recognize our generous sponsors and partners. Without you, we would be unable to promote coverage for and access to much needed mental health services for the Commonwealth. We're living in unusual times and uncertain times due to COVID-19. Feelings of isolation, depression, and anxiety caused by the pandemic cannot be cured by a vaccine. Mental health challenges are the silent pandemic that we must now address. We need your financial support now. Your contributions will help expand the network of care, bringing access to mental health services to everyone who needs help. This year, your contribution is more important than ever. Please give generously, either through the text to give number that will appear throughout the event or on the donation page of our MAMH website. As we transition to the next part of the program, I extend my admiration and appreciation to our honorees and partners, whose stories and advocacy you are about to witness. Thank you and enjoy the program.
Well, hello, my name is Joseph Feaster. I am an executive committee member for the Massachusetts Association for Mental Health. And welcome to our 107th annual Friend and Leader Award event. And I've been given the distinct pleasure of presenting one of our honorees. An honoree this year is, for the Friend and Leader Award, is Bob Rivers, who is the chairman and CEO of Eastern Bank.
Well, first of all, Joe, thanks for the really kind of introduction. Thanks to Mass Association for Mental Health for this kind recognition of myself and really my team at Eastern.
But on the question of mental health, I want to talk about it because when it hits you personally, when it affects you directly, it's a different, your education on it becomes very, very acute and is not a interesting topic or a topic that you can just share. I tell folks, unless you walked in the shoes, it's very difficult to appreciate and have the conversation people can feel. And I'll just begin by telling my personal story. My son, Joseph, suffered with mental illness. It was something which came about when he turned about 18 years old, went off to college, University of Pittsburgh, didn't even know that it occurred, went through high school and everything, played sports, did everything, basketball, football, lacrosse, and went off to University of Pittsburgh, came back that summer, had an episode, eventually sent him back to, had him home for a year, sent him back to University of Pittsburgh. Fast forwarding, in August 3rd, 2010, my son committed suicide. And so I've committed my life to the whole issue of educating, advocating on behalf of mental illness. And so I know that you had some experiences which will give you some enlightenment. If you wish to share them, just know you're speaking to one who has walked in those shoes.
Yeah.
And right now, maybe have walked beyond in those shoes, but nonetheless, you're speaking to one who fully appreciates anything that you may feel with regards to that issue.
Yeah, Joe, I appreciate you sharing the story. I knew a little bit because you referenced it previously, but again, my condolences. It is my greatest fear. Having gone through this in a very similar situation, so much of what you said resonates, is analogous in time, and happened around the same age. And it was shocking and really hard to deal with and figure out for me, in the sense that things started the behavior was different than before. And then finally, their friends really reached out to my wife and I and said, there's a problem here. We didn't recognize the seriousness of the problem. We went to a local hospital on the way to a family trip, thinking that, we'll just go get this checked out and just remedied and we'll go on our way. In the course of that visit, some things were said that led to, that family member being put in a lockdown, for lack of a better word, for observation in a way that we as parents couldn't do anything about. First of all, you're talking to one of the most advantaged people on God's earth in terms of resources, connections. And thankfully, because of that, I could navigate this system about as well as I think you could. But it was really hard. And I can't imagine if someone didn't have the same resources, connections, it must be outrageous. I mean, how you ever figure this out? So have a resource like Mass Association of Mental Health to have a network of resources to help guide you when you need it is invaluable. I didn't know about MAMH at the time. I would never have even thought to. I mean, it's one of the reasons why I think this event and the work you're doing is so important, is just to raise the visibility that this organization exists, has those resources, has people there to put you in touch with other people to help you.
Barbara, as I said earlier, I'm on the executive committee of the Mass Association of Mental Health, and we have what we call the Mass Association of Mental Health Network of Care. Just if you would, why do you think or feel that the network of care would be so important to families? And along with that, I would say, why would you be willing to support and give your resources to the Mass Association of Mental Health, and how would you feel about encouraging others?
Well, certainly, to answer really both of them, I guess, in the same way, is I've learned through my own personal experience, as I said, the system of mental health care is under-resourced, underfunded, and is fairly unknown. I wish I had known about MAMH's network of care. And so that's something that we've got to get the word out more about, of who to call, where to call, how to find the resources to guide you through. And really, the only way to make it more robust, more visible, is really through more funding, particularly in this time where the need has never been greater.
I just want to thank you for sharing. I mean, one of the things in this business of mental health is having the courage to talk about the experience. It takes courage to talk about it, and this is the only way I think we'll break down the stigma. So, Bob, congratulations on being our award recipient, and I wish you the best.
Joe, thanks again. Appreciate it very much.
I was enrolled in the Boston public school systems up until second grade. And second grade is when I moved to Sharon. And moving to Sharon, it was a huge culture shock. First reason being, in the Boston public school systems, I was in a predominantly Black space, and then transitioning to Sharon, predominantly white space. I felt a lot of anxiety, and just talking to the rest of my classmates, like my teacher would ask us to read out loud in class. I remember this vividly. And I just remember just panicking and shaking and not feeling confident in myself. The stigma attached to mental health makes it really difficult to reach out and ask for help, because it's also just a lack of education. I didn't know I had anxiety. I didn't know that I was overstressing myself, overworking myself. When I first met Lucas, it was during our orientation period at Bowdoin College. And so he was in my class year. And I remember seeing on his social media how he was pushing for passing the mental health bill all across the country. And he told me that he was pushing for the mental health bill in Massachusetts and that he was going to testify in the state house. And he asked me if I wanted to join him. And I remember being terrified, like absolutely shaking, nervous. I was able to open up to him about my story and my own issues with mental health. And he was really there to listen to me, and he really gave me the confidence to be able to testify in the state house, and I've never regretted it to this day. My ultimate goal with mental health treatment in Massachusetts is just to normalize the conversation and help others gain the confidence to express themselves and ask for help and talk to their friends, their peers, their teachers, whoever it may be, to just, open up and really seek the help that they need to and understand that they're not alone.
Well, it's great to be here today with Congressman Seth Moulton. I'm looking forward to having a conversation with you today around the invisible wounds of war. As we both know, they've taken far too many lives. They've destroyed families. A lot of work's gone into combating these unseen wounds of war. And over the past 20 years nearly, we've seen the military recognize it much better, and our healthcare providers are more able to deliver better treatments and new models of care. And so as we get together today, I'd just like to take some time to get to your personal experiences and then talk a little bit more broader about, what you've been doing about it.
Sure, absolutely. First of all, General Jack, thank you very much. It's an honor to be here and an honor to have a conversation with you. Yes, I came into the military when it wasn't quite the popular thing that it is to do today. I joined the Marines, worked hard to get into the infantry, which is not always an easy thing to do, as you know, Jack. But then I found myself in the first company of Marines into Baghdad in 2003. So we were just, the guys fighting on the ground, block by block, city by city, town by town, fighting up the eastern side of Iraq, and then going into Baghdad, with chemical weapons suits on, because we expected to get hit with nerve agents and everything else.
So your career in the Marine Corps really personifies a lot of experiences many veterans had in that period, especially from 2001 to 2010, where it was deploy, fight, redeploy, come home, train, redeploy, and just that cycle continued. And we know, that's probably not the best thing to do to a person over time. And I guess, as you know, there's a lot of transition issues, going from one place to another and back and forth. At some point, you probably noticed some changes. And could you describe, at what point did you start feeling some changes? Was it the first deployment when you returned second? And what were those changes you started to feel?
It really wasn't until my second and third deployments that I think it started catching up with me. And I, would start sometimes having nightmares, bad dreams, or just difficulty relating to people.
What was the tipping point that you encountered, or where you reached a point where you said, things aren't going really good. I probably should get a little assistance and get somebody to help me sort this so I can get back on track. Did you have one of those moments, and what was that like for you?
I did. I did. I remember, waking up from a terrible dream and being sort of just sweating head to toe. And honestly, I didn't think much of it. I mean, that's, whatever, if that's the worst thing that happened to me. I mean, I had friends who lost arms and legs, so it didn't seem too bad. I remember my girlfriend at the time in grad school being a little bit, freaked out by it. And I brought this up with a faculty member at Harvard who happened to be in the psychology department. And I kind of just casually told him this story. And he looked at me and he said, Seth, you should really go talk to someone. You should really think about getting help.
So there's always been a stigma associated with this. And how did the stigma affect you personally? And how did you get past that?
Well, first of all, there's a huge stigma, and you're right that it was far worse in the early days of the war. And to the credit of veterans and the military itself, it's gotten better. When my battalion first came back from Iraq, the guys who had symptoms of post-traumatic stress and were acting up or acting out were literally kicked out of the battalion. Far from given help, they were kicked out, put on the street. The worst place to put someone who actually needed to get some help for mental health issues. And one of the things that really changed my perspective on this was talking to a good friend, one of my best friends in the Marines, who actually, we became really good friends out of the Marines, but he was in my platoon the first time around. And he said to me, Seth, they call it post-traumatic stress disorder. But after what we went through, it would be a disorder if you weren't affected by it. This gets to the mental health program that I've proposed through Congress, where we ensure that everyone in the military gets an annual mental health exam, just like you get an annual physical. The second part of the plan is to extend this to every high schooler in America. We know high school is a very difficult time. It's another great group to say, hey, it's just totally normal to check in on your mental health. And then finally, the third part of the program is to establish a nationwide 3-digit mental health hotline.
You're being honored today for the Massachusetts Association for Mental Health's Special Recognition Award. What does that award mean to you, and why is it special?
It means a lot, Jack. Ever since I got to Congress, I've been working on mental health issues because I know how important they are for so many Americans, especially veterans. But it took me a while to find the courage to talk about it personally, to share my own story. What I recognize now is that I wish I'd shared my story earlier, because I've seen that it's helped others share theirs. And my hope is that we can all just save a few more lives. And that's why I know this work is important.
And one final question. Given all the great work that goes on, why should people want to support the Mass Association of Mental Health?
There's two reasons. One, because it's incredibly important. And we've spent a lot of time talking about why mental health work is so important. But the second reason, and I know there are a lot of savvy investors out there, is that you get a huge return on investment for investing in mental health, because not enough people are doing it. So the return, the impact of every single dollar that you give is huge. So be a pioneer, be one of the early big givers to mental health research and work, and know that you will literally save lives.
I had struggles beginning probably around age 5. Some of the behaviors that began very young were eating disorder issues. Self-injury began very young. By the time I was 13, I was in inappropriate relationships with older men, really just kind of looking for what I didn't have. And I graduated from high school and I went on to college, and that's where my struggles really began. So I went back home, and that's kind of when really it began a revolving door of hospitals, date programs, trying to hold down a job and not being able to. And I had a hierarchy of needs that just was not met for many years. And that hierarchy for me began with I needed to know where I was going to sleep at night. So there's a voucher program that is facilitated by the Department of Mental Health. And these vouchers are for people who, get services from DMH, the Department of Mental Health. And most often, these are vouchers for people who are currently stuck in hospitals, or people who are living in group environments who are ready to take that step and they're ready to get an apartment, but they don't have the income, they don't have the rental history, they don't have the credit score. And this voucher is a bridge. MAMH is an organization that is all about advocacy, and they're all about working with the legislature in terms of helping the people who have the finances back these kind of projects. When I heard about the opportunity to contribute to the Housing Council and really share my own experience with homelessness, poverty, being in the system, working again, as a way to kind of help the general public really understand how crucial housing is, has been phenomenally fulfilling for me. It was incredibly powerful for me to have a room full of people who didn't necessarily understand mental health really hear me. And it was a time and a space for me to say, this is my story, and it could be the story of the person next to you. And let's all pay attention to this need.
Congratulations, Senator Friedman, on receiving the MAMH Spirit of Compassion Award. It's a very special honor, and I can't think of someone who deserves it more than you. Why is it so special for you?
I guess for reasons I understand and don't understand, I am just kind of blown away. And I think it's because I take what you all do so seriously, and I am so committed to what you do and what the organization does. What I find is so important and that makes this so compelling is that MAMH is so data-driven, so experienced, so thoughtful, and so thorough in what they do and how they approach things. And that's so you're not just talking to some people who care deeply. You're talking about people who care deeply, have done their homework, know what works, have had lots of experience across lots of venues. And that's priceless to me because I trust what they're saying. I trust the information I'm getting. And I think that you can't ask for anything more.
You and I have walked the journey individually in the space of mental illness, both of us personally and professionally, for a long time. How has it inspired you in terms of where you sit now as in a very powerful role in the Senate?
My experience as a parent of somebody with a serious mental illness is interesting. I look at our journey and I'm so aware of the ups and downs and what our son has been through and how incredibly difficult it is to navigate through this kind of illness and how much courage it takes and how much stick-withedness it takes and how much, in a way, forgiveness it takes, right? Because there's just so much that happens. And even though our son's journey has been long and hard, and he's doing incredibly well right now, what I'm really aware of is how many people, probably the majority of people who suffer from severe mental illness, don't have a foundation. They don't have a base. They don't have that support system in its darkest moments will be there. And when you don't have that, what you have is a long, lonely road, and you probably spend an enormous amount of time in the criminal justice system. And that, to me, is untenable. It's just, I cannot tell you how deeply it drives me when I think that there are people with an illness that are there, that are incarcerated simply because of that illness.
All right, my friend. congratulations.
Thank you.
You so deserve this award. And I know that you will take it to heart and you will just keep moving mountains to ensure that behavioral health is true parity in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. I have complete faith in that. Thank you.
Thank you.
So I work for the Office of Recovery and Empowerment at the Department of Mental Health. And part of my job is to make sure the voice of who we serve is represented at the table. I think for a long time that nobody ever asked the people receiving services how we were doing or what they would like to see in services or how they would like services delivered. So part of my job is to really make sure the important people are at the table, the people we serve at DMH. We have excellent programs in Massachusetts. The problem isn't really our level of excellence. The problem is that there's all these pockets of excellence across the state. And up until the network of care, there's been no real way to access or to know about them. So the network of care that MAMH is working on is really a one-stop shopping for where are these pockets of excellence? Where is the service across the state? I really wanted to change things for older adults who have behavioral health conditions that we've seen in the news around COVID, that in some states and in some circles that older adults were seen sort of expendable or sort of the side effects from opening up the economy. So in the age of COVID, it's even more important to stand up for older adults in mental health.
Thank you, old friends and new acquaintances, for joining MAMH for an evening of virtual fellowship and celebration, for coming together in a time of isolation and uncertainty, and recognizing that mental health matters affect us all. Our hearts are filled with gratitude for the generosity of our sponsors, donors, and funders. You enable us to educate, mobilize, and advocate to protect health and well-being, address housing affordability and justice reform, and improve access to effective care. We make progress through partnership and owe a great debt to our strategic partners from advocacy, government, philanthropic, and provider organizations. You enable us to amplify voices of those we represent and accelerate change on their behalf. We're reminded of the urgency of our efforts by the moving stories and advocacy ambitions of Angela Wallace, Heidi Trainer, and Rob Walker. You set an example for all of us. To our extraordinary trio of honorees, Bob Rivers, a loving father and great leader, whose business acumen is deployed to achieve gains in community building and social justice. Senator Friedman, a fierce advocate and skilled legislator, leading reforms in behavioral health and criminal justice that improve lives and strengthen accountability for those often disenfranchised. Congressman Moulton, whose battle-tested courage and determination are directed now to advancing understanding, eradicating stigma, and securing coverage for mental health and substance use treatment. Admiration and appreciation go to our special guests, Brigadier General Hammond, leading the home base program for veterans, and Secretary Sutters, now leading the COVID-19 Command Center. You each inspire us to action on the MAMH mission to advance mental health and well-being, to eliminate stigma and discrimination. Donations do make a difference, and we pledge to work diligently to improve access to mental health resources throughout the Commonwealth. Stay safe and be well.
you.